we'll be installing a 7-inch lift on a 2015 Ram 1500, 5.7 liter. It is a two-wheel drive truck, so the MaxTrac suspension parts we'll be using are only applicable to a two-wheel drive. I just started by measuring the ride height, the current ride height of the vehicle, just so that when I do the alignment, the change in specs, the difference when it's lifted, it'll be easier for me to input when I do the alignment. And we're gonna begin showing you the parts that we're gonna install on the truck. All right, these are our 4.5-inch spindle lift. These nice, bulky, heavy-duty, great quality parts. Always make sure that you have all your parts before you begin removing any parts on your truck. Just want to make sure you have all your parts and the correct parts. These are our front coil springs. As you can see, our factory ones will probably come up to here. We're going to be installing, these are 2.5-inch plus the 4.5-inch on the spindles, which will give us a 7-inch lift. These are our front shocks. Rear coil springs. Right here, this is going to be the bottom, plus the coil spring spacer that we're going to put on the bottom. Those are just going to sit just like that. This is our rear shock. This one I have extended. This one, you can see the travel. Since we'll be lifting the truck, we have to extend or basically lower the center bearing on the drive shaft, because we need to get a correct angle. Since we're raising it, you don't want to have a tight angle at the center of the drive shaft. This is our track bar extension for the rear. It's going to go in just like that. Since we'll be raising the truck, obviously, most of the components that are on the truck, we're going to have to extend them. Alright, so we got the spring and the spindle in. Everything's just caught, nothing's tight right now, because we want to make sure everything's set perfectly. You want to make sure the springs are set in their boots and their stoppers correctly, and make sure nothing doesn't look any type of way, like your sway bar links, your sway bar on the other side, and everything's basically loose right now. Lower control arms loose, upper control arms loose, spindle, everything is loose, as you can see. So we got this in. I'm gonna start tightening everything up. Make sure you torque to manufacturer specs. I'm just gonna catch everything, and then final assembly will be retorquing everything. All right, so our last component for the front end is gonna be our shocks. So I'm basically gonna slide them up. I'm gonna mount them in the bottom, and we're gonna bring the whole truck down just so we can get the travel for the upper control arm. All right, so we're gonna begin the rear disassembly on the 15 Ram. Rear end is pretty simple. You're basically gonna loosen the lower control arms. You're gonna lower the rear end, loosen the shock. You're going to remove this since we're not using this anymore. We're going to have to remove the fender liner just to access the bolts up top for the rear shock. Then we're basically going to put our pull jacks, support the rear end, lower it down. We're going to disconnect our sway bar links from the top. We're going to disconnect our track bar, and right here is where we're going to put our track bar extension. That big bracket that I showed you guys earlier, it's going to go here. It's basically just going to level this out, because basically the rear end is going to be lower than what it is right now. So we're gonna lower the rear end, remove the springs, remove the shocks, install the new shocks. We're gonna set the new spring in there with the stopper. It's gonna sit right on the bottom right there. And then we're just gonna screw the pull jacks straight up. So we're pulling down the fender liner to get access to the rear shocks and lower control arms in the rear. This one's much easier than doing the front. We're basically going to remove the shocks on both sides. We're going to support the rear axle and loosen the control arms. You don't need to remove any bolts. You're literally just going to loosen and lower, and remove the track bar so we could add the track bar bracket. installed, you want to get your wheels and tires mounted and balanced. We mounted our 35 by 12.5 inch tire on our 20 by 12 inch wheels. Since our wheels are so wide, we had to use the Cheetah along with a few helpers to help us set the bead on the wheels. After you mount your wheels and tires, you're going to want to perform an alignment, because when you lift and raise a vehicle, the camber and caster specs will be out of line, so will the toe. So you're going to want to make sure you adjust that, as well as adjusting your headlights to lower them, because they're going to be shooting pretty high right now. So we're going to need to adjust the headlights, aim a little downwards so that the customer will be able to see at night. Other than that, we're good to go. This build took about 6.5 hours from start to finish. And with the wider look and the raised ride height, the customer drove away really satisfied.